Scale, exit, repeat. Managing business fears and self. What we're talking about today on the Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat show, not the Complete Entrepreneur. We do that every Thursday. We do this one every Friday, 2 o'clock Eastern. And today we're getting into probably one of the most interesting topics and the number one reason why people don't become entrepreneurs. And that's because they have doubt and they have fears. And we're going to take that one on today. It's a difficult one. And we have the doctor in the house today, Dr. Roshanak, and she's going to share with us the challenges and the psychological, the way the brain works and why we have this challenge, why we stop and not and think twice and it is really is truly one of the biggest things that hold people back. What do you think, Michelle?
I am up here.
But it's that thing that goes off in your brain that says, I'm going to lose money, going to be embarrassed, I'm going to fail. The failure, it seems like humans tend to do that.
Wow. How do I live up to all that? I am thrilled to be here. First of all, let me just start by saying thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I am amongst geniuses and giants. I'm really happy to be able to contribute what little I know, how much I know, whatever I've got. And I love this topic, of course. I think it's amazing for us to really start to get into the different aspects of what holds us back from what we want in our lives, what we're here to do. And releasing resistance to success is really the core of all of that. And if you want to put it in the framework of biopsychology, so a lot of us have heard of psychology and we think of psychology and we think of mindset, but what we really give very little due to, unfortunately, is our biology. And our biology plays a huge role in how we go through the world, what we choose to do, what we choose not to do. Our nervous systems protect us. We have incredible body intelligence, but we don't realize what's going on. We think we're making decisions, but we're constrained within a certain framework. Let me back up for a minute. I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to understand that we don't hold ourselves back because, first and foremost, we're stupid, we're not. We're weak, we're not. We're lazy, we're not. Or we're unmotivated, we're not. In fact, we're the opposite of all those things. Exactly. No, that's not. So there's the fear of missing out that would drive you, But then there's the fear of, and here's another way to think of fear, there's risk. There's the fear of growth. There's the fear of the pressure. There's the uncertainty. Sometimes there's a fear of visibility. We have fear of failure and we have fear of success. So some people think, okay, I understand the fear of failure. They haven't heard of fear of success. Some people know they can do it and will hold back intentionally because of how success will affect them. I think we talked about that a little bit. We touched on in one of the other episodes. But when we're talking about fear, when we're talking about self doubt, when we're talking about resistance to success, it's really a biopsychological lens. Exactly. You're absolutely right. Fear of success and fear of failure have one very core thing in common, and that is how will things change if fill in the blanks, I fail or I succeed. And that's what we're afraid of. And that comes together with the pressure, how you're viewed, how your life will change. So let me just go back up for a second. Again, this really has a lot to do with our biology, not just our mindset. And let me think my way through this. You can't think your way through your nervous system. Okay. The bio part is that your body, your nervous system reacts to risk. It reacts to risk before your mind comes in to explain away or overcome or whatever. That's why the root of this is really the nervous system. For entrepreneurs, what is success? People think that just means more money, or everyone's going to think I'm great and I'm really smart. No, it means exposure. That's the first thing that you're risking is exposure of your worth. Because at the end of the day, everybody comes back down to how worthy am I? Am I worthy of love? Am I worthy of this relationship? Am I worthy of my wealth and my celebrity? Am I worthy? Am I worthy? So exposure is really important. And with exposure comes responsibility and, of course, judgment. And let's say you get everything you want, then how are you going to manage that? How are you going to manage your relationships? How are you going to manage the money? There are more people depending upon you, there are more people looking up to you. So your body can register all of that as threat. And then you can have the psychological part kicking in where you say, I'm not ready. I need more time, as you were saying. This isn't the right time. Or maybe even I'm not good enough. Or even when you're good enough, what if I can't sustain it? I remember my older brother was in med school and he was like, don't go. And so there I am. And he goes, you know, you can't live up to this or that. So then I did. He goes, okay, then you can't sustain it. So every time the goalpost just kept moving. But it actually really helped because it scared me to death. So I did very well. But that's the point, is which way are you going to go when you're challenged? And that is very much connected to both your biology, there's the threat, and the psychology. What will it mean? Because we can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't go into the what does that mean to me and in this context, you're going to have a really hard time winning, I think.
Yeah, let's get a little personal here. How about that?
Uh-oh. Colin,
Oh,
I'm
yeah, here
bending
we
the
go.
tables
So,
on you today.
yeah, and Michelle launched a Kickstarter last week, a week and a half ago, and it was a pretty high bar to hit. She's at about 85% right now, so she's getting pretty close to hitting her target. But what went through your mind, Michelle, when you launched that? Because I know you were nervous. I could see you in the office. I could see that you were stressed out. You were thinking, oh, this could fail. It's going to be embarrassing for paw.com. It's going to be embarrassing for you because you're the CEO. What went through your mind during that?
I don't mean just like everyone, the general population, but people that I've, let's just say, convinced to do this and that are counting on it. We have employees. I F up, like they're not going to have a job. For me, I feel like a lot of it is a strong responsibility of my commitments that I personally made, obviously, to others. I'm okay. If I mess up and people are just like, "Oh, you're an idiot, Michelle," I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? I can accept that. What I don't want to do is hurt other people or let others down on my commitment. So that's what went down. Obviously, we also are very, Colin and I are very analytical people. We also know, okay, if we don't do X amount, did our research 50% in 2 days, then that's not good. We did achieve that, thankfully. So grateful to everyone that contributed, but like we did meet that. Now it's just like we're very goal oriented. I don't know. I don't know how else to say it, but for me, it's not just about me, actually. It's just like I do actually think about the impact it has on everyone else. And that concerns me more, doctor, because I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm like 60. And it's like I've done what I need to do and I'm working because obviously I do want to support myself in a good way, but I'm also very concerned about how it impacts others.
Okay, so I guess are you coming to me for to say something
Yeah,
about
I
that?
just
Because that's
want
a really
I
powerful.
yeah,
Okay,
I
so
just
that's
want your take on that because Colin said, how do you manage that like stress, that conflict? And it is very stressful to me because I'm like trying to do everything I can. But I guess I was just trying to give a little background. It's just not, it's actually not just about me. It's probably less about just me. I just want to make things, I don't know. I'm just like, as you can see, I'm conflicted because I actually want to do well for everyone. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
so, but that so I love what you're saying, and I think that's really important because we have a lot of heart-centered, business-minded people. So your business can be, your mind can be on your business, but your heart is still there. And I think it's really important to consider that does not take you out of the realm of the threat detection. So let me explain. So, yes, many people are deeply concerned about their failure and how they're being seen. But I know, especially those who have a fair amount of employees, they're like, I can't go under or quit or leave or anything, certainly not fail, because of how it will affect others. It starts with the family. First of all, what will happen to me? Then what people think, what will happen to me, not me personally, but what will happen to my family, my spouse, my kids? Then they go, what will happen to all the people who they themselves and their families are also counting on me to pull this? That's a tremendous amount of pressure and responsibility. So please allow me to say to all my heart centered entrepreneurs out there that there's so much self doubt that comes not from selfishness or insecurity, which is how most people think of it, but from your heart that you care so deeply and the responsibility that comes from you actually having that compassion and that eye, not just to yourself. You're not being egocentric. You consider yourself, but you also consider others, which is, by the way, how we should go through life altogether, from my perspective. But you realize that your decision doesn't just affect yourself, it affects your family, it affects your clients, it affects your team, it affects the community, right? So that fear of failure becomes even stronger, right? But it comes out of that individual as I first presented it. So it's not just the what happens if I mess up to me and how people see me and how I will be considered and what my opportunities will be, but what about my mistakes hurting other people? If other people lose their money, their homes, their whatever, their livelihood because of me, how could I do something to let someone else down? I can't. So I'm going to be super, super cautious. And so that is, again, the biopsychological lens, because you go back to that level of threat that your system is feeling right just at the core. It's not just about there's an opportunity and then can I take it or should I not because of how I am personally. It's about the pressure and the consequences and the possibility of causing harm, right? So that is a threat. Obviously, harm is a threat. And then your mind So your body gets this, and then your mind builds a story around that activation of your nervous system. I need to be more certain. I need to get this perfect. I cannot afford to risk getting this wrong. So I'm going to be ultra conservative, and I'm going to be far more hesitant until and unless I know this will work. So your tolerance, your tolerance, your risk aversiveness, or your risk tolerance, that window of tolerance shrinks considerably, and you hold yourself back. So you'll delay the launch. You'll overthink your decisions. You'll, I don't know, charge less. You'll avoid scaling. Colin, you just had to put out a book on scaling. So you avoid growth. You'll stay small. Maybe you won't ask for help or support because of whatever exposures involved there, or risk of taking someone else's advice that'll send you down the wrong path. So it's not because you're not good enough, and it's not because you don't care, it's because you're that good and you do care. So that there's a paradox there. And sometimes staying small is the decision you make. You know, a lot of times we'll go, I didn't want that. Actually, you did, because the reward for staying small is avoiding failing others. And that's actually what's limiting your
And
impact.
and can I also add that, and you probably have a better answer to this, but my sense is that this is universal. That I was with a gentleman who is very successful. He's worth about $500 million. He's accomplished some very amazing things, and he was writing a book. And I met with him for dinner about 3 months ago. But he was very nervous about the book, and he was very nervous about publishing his book and it being a bit of a flop. He's got 200 employees, very successful. I don't want to give too much information away because you'll probably guess who he is. But the fact of the matter is, it is universal, isn't it? Goes through everyone who ever tries to start a business or ever thinks about starting a business. And sometimes it can become so debilitating that they don't start the business. Do you see that happening?
Short answer, no. And I'll tell you why. Because there are a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, and they are incredibly egocentric, and they're incredibly, unfortunately, traumatized. In fact, VCs look for founders who are absolutely left of center. They grow up, and the one thing that they learned is that if I can do this, if I can perform that, I will be deemed as worthy. I will be in the room. I will be considered. And so everything is put at risk for them being able to, quote unquote, succeed, but they don't get the emotional intelligence part that comes with that, which is why there's such a toxic environment in these business with these people who are like straight A students, and they do amazing work in on a smaller scale, and then when it starts to scale, then you'll see the whole thing falling apart, because what they were good at was maybe the engineering, but they have an absolute absence of emotional intelligence or that compassion. And it's not that they're bad people, it's that what is the bigger threat to self. So there's a universality of worthiness, I would say, for every entrepreneur, but not a universality of being heart led and considering other people. So every entrepreneur needs to know this: your worth is not on the line every time you take a risk. Your business may succeed or fail, and also success and failure epoch dependent. Things may go well or not, a decision may work out or not, but none of that changes the core of who we are and what your worth is and your worthiness. So I think this is so fundamentally important, because we are not machines. We are divine humans, and what we create, what we bring forth, I like to think of conscious capitalism, is I'm filling a need that somebody has. That's the win-win. So that's really important to focus on that, because so many entrepreneurs unconsciously make business all about performance. You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on this. And look, I do think that it's universal. I do think that everybody goes through it. I know I go through it a lot,
Yeah, but everyone
launching
isn't
this
like
company
you.
or that company or this idea. But I was going to ask you about techniques. Many people in the audience here, they've thought about starting a business, and finally they may have gotten their concept out there or whatever it is, but wherever they're at in their stage of their business, and this fear element comes into it. Are there any techniques you can recommend, like actionable techniques that we can use to, I don't know, or breathing? I don't know,
I
like
don't
what
know.
is it? Like,
I was just going to say that. How do we breathe through it, doctor? Like, how do we manage ourselves? I'm one of those people that wakes up at 3 a.m. every morning, and of course, these thoughts flood my head. And it's weird now that I'm talking through it. It's like this overarching theme. How do we keep it from being our overarching theme? Because I think when we're thinking this doubt or whatever it is, it does direct how we function. What do we do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're 100% correct. You guys talked about breathing, so we can do that really quickly. A lot of people think breathing is woo. Breathing is purely physiological. So if you, first of all, you should always breathe in through your nose because you get not more air, but more oxygen. And that's physiological. So if you breathe through your nose, your oxygenation improves. So let's suppose you breathe in for 4 seconds. If you breathe out for 6 or 8 seconds, that means your exhale is longer than your inhale. It literally slows down. There's a physics to this, there's a biophysics to this. It slows down your heart rate. When your heart rate slows down because of that long exhale, it signals to your brain everything's okay and calms your nervous system. So that's my tagline is I teach the science behind them. That's one of the things that actually when people are like, okay, breathe. And if you take a deep breath, it's not about the taking the deep breath in, it's about how long are you breathing out. And
All
if
right,
you breathe,
that's good to know. I didn't know that actually.
how would you?
Yeah, so
Right?
it's not, say that again. It's more
Okay.
about how slowly you let
So
out your breath.
so breathing works to calm the nervous system based on what kind of breathing you do. There's all different kinds of breathing techniques. One of them is called the 2-4, which means that
Mhm.
your in breath, your inhale, let's say it's 2 seconds, is half of your exhale, which would be 4 seconds. If you breathe in for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 8 seconds. If you breathe in for 8 seconds, you breathe out for 16. If you breathe in for 5 seconds, you breathe out for 10 seconds. And what that does, as long as the exhale is longer than the inhale, is it
Okay.
slows down your heart rate. When your heart rate is slowed down, when is that? When you're calm, when you're relaxed.
Yeah.
So we have the fight or flight that people are used to. That is your sympathetic nervous system acting up. So let me just give a little background because this is really important. Everything outside of your brain and spinal cord are your peripheral nervous system. What runs the bulk of that is your what's known as your autonomic nervous system. Why do we need to know about that? Because people talk about fight or flight all the time. They talk about stress, they talk about trauma. All of that is connected to your autonomic nervous system that has two branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. You can think of the sympathetic is sympathetic to your stress. Okay. So you go into this activation that we colloquially called fight or flight. Your heart races. Why? It's got to pump blood into your muscles because you're going to fight or flight. See? But the parasympathetic nervous system is colloquially called your rest and digest. When you're at rest, your heart rate is nice and slow.
Okay.
So you can think of it as the gas and the brakes. The sympathetic is the gas, the parasympathetic system is your brakes. So when you breathe such that you slow down your heart rate, you trick your nervous system into going into that rest and digest state. It says the parasympathetic is like putting your foot on the brakes. The parasympathetic sends the signal to your brain and goes, everything's good down here because your heart rate is slower. So you do an immediate slowing down of your heart rate because of the way that your physics and physiology is set up for the blood pumping through and the pressure and all that stuff that you guys really don't want to know right now. The point is, though, that if you take an exhale that is longer than your inhale, preferably twice as long, you slow down your heart rate. That signals to your brain everything's okay. So you
Awesome.
start to come out of fear state.
Yeah, you're not freaking out. Yeah.
And that breath should be what's known as a belly breath. So you don't go right. You breathe
Right.
gently into your belly
You're not
in through your
hyperventilating.
nose.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're not doing like a Wim Hof here. So you do a nice, slow, gentle inhale through your nose. So you get a lot of nice oxygen in, not the air, but the oxygen. And then you do the exhale through your mouth. You can imagine you're breathing out through a straw if you want. That'll help to slow down. And you breathe slowly, nicely out of your mouth with this long exhale. And there you go. You immediately calm down the activated nervous system. Now you can think more clearly. Now your mind matters, but it won't matter because your body's reacting too quickly for your mind to catch up. One of the other brakes gas things that you can do is, so we have 60, 70,000 thoughts per day. Something like 95% of them are
Wow.
repetitive, 80% of them are negative, 85% of them, whatever percentages you want, they're very high. And that goes through a part of your brain in the prefrontal cortex that is also responsible for depression and also rumination. We ruminate. We will sit there and think about these bad things over and over. How do you stop that? If you write things down, people talk about journaling. Another, like, why would I write it down? And no, not on your computer. Better to do it by hand on a piece of paper. If you write down, you don't have to journal, but if you start to write something, then those runaway ruminating thoughts, that's the gas, right? Can slow that down with a matching part of your prefrontal cortex that is responsible for what is known as considered thought. So your emotions can hijack you, but when you sit down and think about things and you write them down, you are again putting the brakes to the gas, as it were. And you're coming out of rumination, you're coming out of that spiral, and you're starting to. There are two things that are going on, but one of them is this considered thought that happens through the writing into something. And
So, in
yeah, go ahead. You want to say something, Michelle?
yeah, I'm just
Sounds like we.
wondering because, yeah,
Oh, there
call
she is.
in a conversation.
Is she breaking up or is that me?
Yeah, I know she's
Can you hear
breaking up.
me?
She's breaking up. I don't know
Sorry.
why. I'm actually
Uh,
on a
Yeah,
different
no, you're
network
good
here.
now. You're good now.
Michelle.
or you can hear
Okay, so we don't hear you well. I'm just going to finish the thought that I had about the two different ways that it
me?
helps to externalize your thoughts. One is that considered thought that I said, and the other is you, instead of having a whole whale to eat at once, you just go to the next decision, not the whole thing, not the what is the whole future, the whole breakdown of it, but you think what is the next best step. And then you break it into chunk size identifications of what is a challenge, not a problem, but a challenge, which is exciting, not distressful, but exciting, that brings us into a state of eustress, EUSTRESS, which actually makes us better, faster, sharper, etc. And so that's a great coping tool also. So that's known as the worry time technique. So your worries don't run the whole day. You're just breaking it down into one bite-sized challenge at a time.
All right.
So
So I just feel like you're giving us so much good information. Colin, we have to have Doctor back
yeah,
because, like, I feel like I'm just going to say what I feel like and what I hear. There's a lot of media that's just like very few topics on this kind of like issue, or call it
yeah,
issue. Actually, it's an
yeah,
opportunity, like imposter syndrome and this or that. But what doctor is telling us is it's not so simple as that, but yet it is, right?
yeah,
Like she just gave this one theory. And I'm just like, I was just telling Colin today, but when we were prepping for the meeting, because actually Olivia, who helped us start the club, she is actually finishing her PhD, actually doctor in psychology. And I was reading some posts she made about there are people that need this heavy, deep pre-think because we're like, oh, we just have to talk through everything and brainstorm. That's not like there are other people, like for me personally, like I need to hear a problem and really think through it without pressure. I know I'm rambling a bit and I apologize for that, but it just really points to there's so many different ways for us as entrepreneurs and as people, because we are human actually first, to deal and try to navigate this situation. I found that extremely inspiring. I know Mimi does too, and like hopeful. And hopeful, I guess I'll just say hopeful, because I tend to go, I'm one of those people just, oh my God, I'm so worried about this. And I just go down the spiral. And it's very hard for me to talk about it. I don't know. Colin, what do you
yeah,
think?
yeah. I think that a lot of pressure comes from the people around us. And when I was graduating from college in 1993, everyone thought I was crazy to become an entrepreneur. They said you should become a lawyer, Colin. Based on your what you're doing, you're gonna make a lot more money becoming a lawyer. And I was just so nervous at the time. And I just looked internally and I said to myself, what do I got to lose? Let me give it a shot. And I went out and I started a business, lasted for about 12 months. We flipped into another one and then another one and a couple public companies later, whatnot. It turned out to be very obviously very successful and now I hire a lot of lawyers. But there was something at the time where I even just remember this. It's gonna sound really weird, okay? I wrote a letter to my mother, oh, and said, "This is what I'm doing." She didn't want me to do this. Nobody wanted me to do this. My parents, my friends, no one wanted me to launch a business. Okay, my wife's parents, they not wife at the time, but we're dating. No, everybody thought I was like crazy or something. I felt like I was almost on my own doing this and pushing forward, but this is what I really wanted to do, and it obviously it worked out for me. There's just how do you close off the noise? I know in our book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, we talk about a technique called stage gates. And I often say to entrepreneurs that if you just set your stage gate, that gives you the room. You say, I'm either going to kill it or pivot. So I'm going to pivot or kill it if I don't hit this particular stage gate. And that particular stage gate is your first step in a business. It's your first accomplishment. It's getting 10 customers or 10 distributors or whatever it is. And I'm going to give myself a very specific date. But before that date, I'm going to shut out all the noise. And sometimes I think with entrepreneurs, we just got to shut out the people around us when we first make that initial leap. And if you're in the audience and this resonates with you, please raise your hand. We got 30 minutes left. I know we got another doctor on stage. We'll get to you in a second. Thank you. And Jason's going to come on stage here as well. Doctor, can you talk a little bit about that, shutting out the noise?
So, yeah, distraction is a big problem. And we could talk about that, could be a whole episode. But distraction is an important thing to consider when we're thinking about what we're doing. So, people love to go into flow state. Flow state is when you are really focused, but you're not just focused, you are literally optimizing the thing that you're going to do, everything that's related to the thing that you're going to do, and pushing out all the distractions. So actually, when you go into flow state, it's known as transient hypofrontality, big word, but what it means is transient, this for a short time. This frontal cortex of yours, so that is the thinking part of your brain, gets shut down. So you're not thinking, you're not considering what everybody is saying, for example, all the different ways that you get distracted and you think, what about this and what about that? And you're like a monkey jumping from branch to branch to branch. And of course, you can't really focus and you can't make strides linearly going forward. And the good thing about making strides linearly going forward is that there are mechanisms in your brain. One is connected to learned helplessness and one self efficacy. And these different pathways are actually connecting to the brain recognizing control. What does that mean? It recognizes that your behavior cause has an effect. And that actually allows your brain to take away anxiety, take away this hesitation, that this inaction, and speaks to the biological underpinning to what is known as the competence confidence cycle. So you think you have to have competence and then you'll do the thing, or you think you have to have confidence and then you'll do the thing, but they feed into each other and there's a biological basis to that.
Yeah, and there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. I've always believed that actually, because
Sure.
sometimes
But that's not what
entrepreneurs
we're
get
talking
that
about.
big win first, real quick, and then they get so many entrepreneurs I've worked with, became very arrogant and lost everything. I can't tell you how many. It's unbelievable. But that being said, we do have another doctor on the stage, Doctor S. I guess we're going to call you right now. And thank you for being patient. Really appreciate that. What are your thoughts on this topic, or any questions for Doctor Roshanek?
Yes, but it's yes, but it's windy.
Right. No, I mean, right. Like, right. Yeah. Like for me, I could only speak for myself, obviously. It's like it all comes at an expense, right? Like I took somebody's money. For me, that weighs heavier. You know what I mean? It's therefore I must live up to the promise. So it's Colin. I know you posed a question, and not to be contrarian, as you say I am, but it's not that. It's just like you don't want to let others down, not in a weird, weak way, but it's just like you made a promise. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, doctor.
Thank
Mhm.
you. Before you, can I can I speak to? I think this might be related to the question you're going to ask, but can I speak to this because you and Michelle both brought up exposure for quite. So would you like me to speak to that for a minute? Okay, great, thanks. And maybe if you could mute your microphone because it's really kind of windy and noisy out there. Thank you. So I love what you brought up, and I really appreciate what you shared. And clearly, this is a recurring theme. Michelle has it. You have it. There's so many of us that have it. And I want to say that this is connected to that fear of success. Again, so many people know about fear of failure. Almost nobody knows about fear of success. And it's this idea of more visibility. When you have success, you have more visibility, you have more pressure, you have more people depending upon you, and your decisions affect other people. But also, as you said, when you get taller, you're more if you get higher up in the tree, that aphorism that you guys have, that the nakedness, exactly, that more people have opinions about you, right? More people see you, more people can judge you, more people can project onto you, more people have expectations of you, and that makes one feel very vulnerable. And so then again it goes back to the, I always want you to think about things in terms of how is your nervous system perceiving threat. So self sabotage means to do this, right? There's an intentionality behind sabotage. Most of the time, self sabotage, there is not an intentionality. But when it comes to fear of success, self sabotage is the correct term. And it can be an actual resistance to success itself. Although it isn't a resistance to some of the trappings of success that you want, it's a resistance to being more exposed, what it means to be successful on both sides, right? The positive, quote unquote, and the negative. So that success means you can no longer hide the way you've been hiding, because we all hide in some way, right? You are now more naked, as you said, more visible, more reachable, more accountable. And the biggest thing of all is more open to criticism, misunderstanding, judgment, blame, and shame, disappointment, right? So there's a lot of pressure, first of all, to build well. And then, second of all, to maintain what you've built. And then, of course, in the US, it's I have to keep growing, or this idea that if you're not constantly growing, if you're not constantly, it's like a sickness that you have to keep growing and you have to keep improving. Otherwise, what? Do you see any of the animals that God created or any of the flora or the fauna going around saying, if I don't keep doing this, then I don't have my value? Again, if you don't connect to the meaning of this, then you won't understand what the issue is. So you won't understand how to manage it. So entrepreneurs very often pull back right when things are working And I heard the word procrastinate. They do procrastinate or overthink or delay or play smaller, whatever, not because they don't want the growth, but because of what the growth means to them. And that meaning, that visibility equals a lack of safety. They don't feel safe. It can feel unsafe to be that visible.
All right, we
I
got. Go ahead,
completely.
doctor.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna wrap up what I was gonna say. Like I resonate with everything that you're saying. In fact, like this today, actually, I had a client, a potential client, and as I was leading up to the meeting with that person, I started crying. I don't even know where that came from because I saw the success like happening, and it just put a lot of pressure on me. And then she canceled, and I felt so much relief. I don't know what that is. So I guess my question was gonna be like, what other tips do you have to overcome that tendency to self sabotage?
Perfect. I love that. And I was just thinking about, I should give you guys some techniques. Let me be clear before I jump into that. The most important thing is to be very clear that it's exposure that success requires that is the challenge. The fear of exposure that success requires is the challenge, is the deeper work that is required when building a business that people don't pay attention to. So building the capacity to be seen, that's part of the technique, is how do you build the capacity to be seen? How do you tolerate being visible without the things that are problematic, like shape shifting or over controlling or even abandoning yourself at the umpteenth level of that. And the shape shifting is what happens is we put the locus of safety outside of ourselves, and we're like, I have to do this so that I can feel safe, because you're not anchored in that safety yourself. So at a certain point, success is not about can you create it or what does it take, but can you let yourself be seen? And what that really means is that at a certain stage, the challenge is not just building the offer, the team, or the revenue, which Colin is amazing at, but it's the challenge of building the capacity to stay regulated while being seen. One way to regulate, as we discussed, was the breathing. That's a mid level regulation. Nervous system regulation at the core of how you see yourself and how you anchor your safety. And that takes quite a bit of practice. You can't do it in one day, but there are ways to recognize when that's happening and go into that. So the first thing to do is to recognize that you need to start, right, to answer your question, is to regulate before you get to that stage. You want to do the, so you don't want to start fortifying your house for a tornado or a hurricane when the tornado or the hurricane hits. You do it before. You certainly don't do it after. So one of the things that I would recommend for all entrepreneurs is, as you consider going into this and as you're in your baby initial startup stages, make sure you learn how to regulate for visibility as part of your professional development. So before the launch, before the interview, before the conversation that you're glad didn't happen, right? You spend a few minutes bringing your body down from the activation that's happening as you're anticipating, as your fear, as your threat response is building up. So going back, for example, to something very simple like that breathing, you can go for a walk. That helps to push out some of that energy that's really building up. So anything that's building up the energy, you want to be able to deal with that. You can do it through your breathing, you can do it through walking, you can do like a bunch of drop down, do some push-ups, something to dissipate this high level of preparation that the body has. The fight or flight, again, your heart starts to beat fast. Why? Because you're getting ready to do something physical. So you have something physical to release. It can be very helpful. A second thing to do is to name that exposure. If you just say, I'm scared, what does that mean? You ask yourself, what feels dangerous here? So now, once you realize what it is, then you can start to address it. Is it the being criticized? Is it the jealousy? Is it the misunderstanding? Is it the expectation? If you can start to parse out the specific fear that you have, you can start to work with it more directly. Then you can start to also, again, with the preloading and the during, you can start to recognize your triggers, and that can include your own thoughts, and then recognizing your bodily reactions that are signaling to you, the for example, anxiety when your heart starts to race or whatever. And last, and I'll stop after this, but not least, is you can build what's known as a visibility ladder. Okay. You don't want to be overwhelmed, excuse me, but you can use this whole exposure. So if you write down like 5 to 10 being seen actions from the easiest to the hardest, and you can rate them, start with the easiest one, right? So this is like a titration. You can slowly release into that. You can do the first easiest thing that you fear when you're looking at exposure, and do that thing until you don't have that fear anymore. You just, it drops, or at least it's very much mitigated. Then you go to the next one, and you can slowly start to build up your resilience by connecting to exposure therapy is well known in psychology. You can start to build up your resilience to whatever it is that you is the meaningful thing about being exposed, until it no longer triggers your threat response.
So it's like an internal battle that we have to face as entrepreneurs to win that external battle. That's interesting.
You
I don't know
say
if
the
this
word
is one,
battle, that
but
goes right into fear and threat. But if you use it, if you
yeah.
say it as like a challenge or like a practice, then it's not so scary and overwhelming, and it becomes much more
Okay.
manageable.
Okay. I like that. I sometimes say if just take one small step when you're starting a business, right? And registering the domain name, choosing a logo. Just take these one small steps, and then you start to see it come together, and you feel a little bit more comfortable, and you say, "This actually makes a lot of sense." And other people are giving you validation. You're vetting it with friends. We also have Jason online, and I know you have Pierre as well. But Pierre, thank you for being patient. Jason, we always love to hear from you. And have you ever really been fearful in your life when it comes to starting a business? Jason, tell us the truth.
and then you say you move forward. I think that's the way to deal with it. Jason, that's you.
Moving forward, I like that. For me, that's been like a huge theme in my life. Like, I just have to be like, yeah, maybe you messed up, whatever. We can stay in that zone or we can just try to move forward. And when I just remind myself of that, which I've been doing that since I was young, I don't know where I got it from. I feel like that's been my saving grace.
So, one of the ways that actually you could manage this sort of reality check yourself as you start to spiral and you think everyone's going to judge me and then I'll be exposed and I have to get this perfectly is to just stop and ask yourself, what is the thought that you're having? And let's be a scientist about this, be very rational. What is the evidence that supports that thought? Why do you think that? What are you thinking it because there's real evidence behind it, or is it some story that you've internalized that really doesn't hold any water? And then, very importantly, think about other possible outcomes rather than like abject, horrific failure. What else could happen? And as you start to go through that, my recommendation is to go to the increasingly more positive outcomes. So you end up, first of all, recognizing what's the worst outcome, how would you handle it? And your brain goes, okay, I know how to handle it. So there's less anxiety because the biggest fear is I don't know what's going to happen. But if I know I can survive it, then my brain calms down. And then the other thing is, as you start to go through this and you get to the most positive one, you're in a very activated, motivated state. So you're ready to move forward.
Yeah, I think I'm learning a lot today. There's a lot more to this internal stuff than I realized. Pierre, thank you for joining us on stage and being so patient. Again, we really do enjoy having you on. And if you don't know, this is also a podcast, YouTube, and it will also be an article that will be published on startup.club. We publish articles there and they get the front page of Google, and we're looking for contributors to write articles. Pierre, what are your thoughts on this topic? And do you have a question for the doctor?
Hi, Pierre. Yeah, you did.
the way that you work as an entrepreneur is radically different than working for somebody in a formal position in a job. And I think you can get anxiety there because you're trying to, there's things that you now have to figure out what to do that you would not have done had you just worked for somebody as a program manager or employee and that type of thing. Logging your wins, I think, can also help you in getting rid of that imposter syndrome feeling and starting to take some solace in things you're getting accomplished. It is, entrepreneurship is a slog, and I think it's very, there's a lot of things that are disorganized at the beginning, but that's also part of the point, is trying to take those steps bit by bit to organize. And I think over time you learn how to, as Dr. Hashimayu had mentioned, regulate your feelings about that to be better. So I hope this helps out the room and hopes it helps the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, we're pretty much run out of time. It's 2:59. Doctor, do you have a good 1 minute close for us here to inspire us entrepreneurs and to take that step and to not be as fearful anymore? I don't know if it's that easy, but
One line sentence is, you're here with reason. You are absolutely necessary, not just for yourself, but for others. And you're worthy. My line is, do not forget that what brings you joy is going to bring others joy. That's it.
and you know what? I'm going to quote one of my a philosopher, Tolkien, who Gandalf. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is left to us. And to me, that phrase means a lot because it means we can cower and hold back and not launch and not be embarrassed, or we can go out and we can strike and we can try to make something happen. And if we fail, but we learn as we fail and we build more from that. Winning in a company is not about winning every single battle. It's about winning the ultimate prize, right? Which is creating a successful product or service that people will buy and that you can ultimately start, scale, exit from.
But
We
doesn't that bring you joy? Isn't that about bringing you joy that you're
hundred
bringing
percent,
forth?
100%, and there's a dopamine that goes in effect. We haven't even talked about that. When you do register that domain, or you do launch that new business, there's some chemicals. It's like a blackjack player who always needs that hit. And I know that happens to me, and I know it happens to a lot of other entrepreneurs. We haven't even gone down that path yet. But I do think it's important to get out there and try. And if you fail, it's okay. And we have AI today, and that makes things a lot easier because you don't have to be a freaking programmer anymore. You can program apps and you don't have to be a programmer. You can create songs, you can create images, you can launch communities. There are so many things you can do with AI. I actually think AI is maybe a great equalizer. It allows anyone who's got imagination to do what they need to do to help launch their business successfully and maybe address a little bit of the fear of, I don't really know how to write a great article, but AI can clean that up. I don't really know how to do a great project plan, but AI can clean that up. I think AI is probably one of the biggest forces in entrepreneurship in our lifetime. And I think it actually helps to address the fear and self-doubt that we currently have because we're not all experts at everything. But nowadays, we're not just jack of all trades anymore. We're master of all trades because of AI. All right, doctor, last word from you, and we'll close it out.
The last word for me is that the work here is that you are born to create, that you are born to bring forth what you have, and that you are born to be seen. And there is no such thing as failure. There's just this experience that is this very exciting engagement with life. So go out there and live it.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy.